أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين صدق الله العلي العظيم وصلوا على محمد وآله الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Inshallah, we'll continue with the lecture by respected scholar Sheikh Mahdi. Let us welcome him with another salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة على رسول الله وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه المنتجبين سيما بقية الله في الأرضين عجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I pray inshallah that everyone has had a spiritually fruitful month of Ramadan thus far, the Layal al-Qadr that we have in the nights that have passed experienced. Inshallah, they've been nights of reflection, of reconnection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nights of repentance, and nights of hope and optimism, inshallah. We turn to our study of letter 31 of Nahj al-Balagha, where Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wasalam is admonishing his son. And we are, of course, here to read, to brainstorm, to reflect, and hopefully to collaborate together in how we can best serve our children. So last night we kind of were going through the social element of preparing kids to enter society and some of the things that they should be aware of. So I'll just kind of recap very quickly what we discussed last night, read the section, and then inshallah get to the second portion that we were not able to complete. So after the Imam speaks about how a person should engage in speech, last night we said that the Imam says, tread a path that you don't fear misguidance. Then he says, وَأْمُرْ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ تَكُنْ مِنْ أَهْلِهِ وَأَنْكِرِ الْمُنْكَرِ بِيَدِكَ وَلِسَانِكَ وَبَايِنْ مَنْ فَعَلَهُ بِجُهْدِكَ وَجَاهِدْ فِي اللَّهِ حَقَّ جِهَادِهِ وَلَا تَأْخُذْكَ فِي اللَّهِ لَوْمَةُ لَائِمٍ. So the Imam says, enjoin others to do good, or enjoin the good, and you shall be among the good doers. We provided two possible ways of thinking about what the Imam is saying here. One is that enjoining the good is itself an obligation, an Islamic value, and by performing that, we are performing a good act, and because of that, we become among the doers of good. And this is especially important because enjoining the good and forbidding the evil, but in this case, enjoining the good, is one of the neglected obligations. And once that is abandoned, then so many other things begin to break apart. In a way, society begins to deteriorate, and as a result of that disintegration, the Imam says that in other riwayat that the opportunists, they will come and capitalize on this vacuum. They will take control, and you will find yourselves in not only in difficult positions, but unable to change your situation. So that's one. And the second explanation we gave is that itself has a psychological effect, joining others to do good, in that it challenges ourselves to be better than we are. If we are not practitioners of that act of good, then we ask ourselves and we challenge ourselves to be among the practitioners. If we practice it, but not at a level that is satisfying to us, or we know is worthy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then again, we're challenged to try to up our game, so to speak. So it has that positive effect. Not only does it ensure that a Islamic obligation is fulfilled, but also it is motivating, that it's encouraging for people to try to be a better contributor to the collective good. Then the Imam transitions to forbidding the evil, and he says, forbid evil with your hand and your tongue. We spoke about the different levels, sharing another narration from Imam Ali والسلام, about those 3 levels of forbidding the evil, with the heart, with the tongue, and then with the hand, and how each of these are different levels of virtuous forbidding of evil. This is a little bit more difficult because it requires you to be critical of other people's actions. And joining the good is critical too, but it's not. It doesn't seem to cut as deeply, and people don't seem to take as much offense as when you are forbidding evil, because forbidding of evil is making an observation, determining that something Islamically unacceptable is happening, and trying to deter the person from continuing in that line of action. That's more difficult because it calls us not only to a higher level of confidence that we're correct but also because we have to have that self-esteem and to be that commitment to critique another person's actions. Again, none of this means that you have to be it has to be done harshly, or it has to be done out of some sort of ill feeling or of privilege or entitlement. No, all of this obviously is rooted in love, but regardless, it's still difficult to initiate, and it's difficult for people to receive the forbidding of the evil. So the Imam puts that second. Forbid evil with your hand and your tongue. So the Imam takes for granted that forbidding of the evil with the heart is already there, speaking to a committed Muslim. And the Imam says, then distance yourself from its perpetrators with all of your might. So those who are really pursuing, advancing ways of life or actions that are detrimental to an Islamic way of life, maintain your distance. Now, again, here there sometimes are considerations with how you maintain your distance. Let's say if it's with people that you may be in relationship with, familiar relationships, relatives, it's a little trickier here because we're instructed on one side not to sever relationships with relatives. But at the same time, this instruction of distancing is still true. There's no reason to sever a relationship. You can be in communication, but just make sure that there's a clear distance. And that clear distance is meant to signify that there is a difference of approach and difference of values. We can still be respectful of the fact that we are pursuing different objectives in life. We want to raise our children certain ways. That doesn't mean we have to engage in animosity with a member of our family, relatives, aunt, uncle, cousin. No, it's just, this is a decision that we're making. This is how we'd like to raise our family and raise our children. And we don't want to coerce anyone else to do that. If they're Muslim and they will, receive positively the encouragement, great. But if not, a person's made their choice. There's nothing shameful. There's nothing embarrassing about being firm in the decisions that you're making about how you want to live your life and about how you want to raise your children. So if it's within the confines of family, still the distance needs to be there. Because, this whole thing is about appreciating how people impact one another, sometimes in very subtle ways. You spend time with someone or you engage with a certain culture, it'll have an effect on you, whether you like it or not. It's not just about people who are, intimate friends or that you invite to your homes. No, everything that you engage with is having an impact on you. In riwayat that we have, if I'm not mistaken, I can't remember if it's from the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, or one of the Ahlul Bayt. We'll just say from one of the Ma'asumeen. It's iftar here, so I don't have to worry about invalidating my fast of making a false attribution, but I'll play it safe here. One of the Ma'asumeen, that even the person that you exchange pleasantries with, you exchange salams with, that person has an impact on you. So because of that, you want to make sure that you maintain a distance. Maintain a distance, distance yourself from its perpetrators with all of your might. So be serious about that. In parenting, this is one of the things that unfortunately, many of us learned the hard way, and maybe it's just a part of our growth, that being proactive in our children's relationships, being proactive in our children's engagements and activities, pay dividends. And the return on investment is so incredibly high than trying to resolve a problem that is already there, and we are reacting to a problem that some of it may be born out of our neglect or just lack of care. Which means social circles. It's tough when your children become preteens and teenagers, that transition between children who really are attached to you and now are trying to establish their independence and autonomy. Whereas prior to their preteen years, the children want to involve you in most things that they're doing, even if they're playing with their friends. They like the presence of an adult parent because it brings them a sense of safety and comfort, and they may genuinely enjoy the fact that their parents are there and observing them. When they become preteens and teenagers, again for a myriad of reasons, that presence sometimes becomes uncomfortable. So that's where many families will struggle in actually being able to identify, like, who are the people that my child engages with, and most their intimate social circles, and also what they spend their time doing. And all of this has become both complexified and complicated through the introduction of electronic mediums. So we're talking about social media, we're talking about just communication technologies, which phones and text messaging. I don't know if that's technically social media. I don't think it is, but people text all the time. We always hear, I hear from time to time of parents lamenting that their children are texting all the time, or their primary mode of communication is through texting. It may be through their through the kind of virtual activities that they participate in. Communities of gamers, social media communities where people are, subscribe and follow certain, online personalities, and they're consuming that. So it's tough for parents because the parents are trying to, walk that tightrope between not being aware and providing protection and support to their children, but at the same time respecting kind of their independence and giving them space to grow. That's a really difficult task, and I want to sympathize with everyone. I'm not saying that there's a right and wrong way, and I'm not saying it's easy. It's far from it. All parenting is difficult. It's not even about a certain age group. Each age group has its own challenges. But the Imam says, distance yourself from its perpetrators, which means, again, it's not only as a parent being there to dictate rules, but it's teaching your child what it means to have their their sensitivities heightened, to know what is unacceptable to them, and they be able to draw a line in the sand. Because we as individuals, there's so many facets of who we are that are concealed to others. It doesn't matter how intimate your relationship is with another person. The only kind of being that you have no secrets with is God. And even then, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may know things that may not be fully aware to ourselves. But with everyone else, there are boundaries. And there are things that we conceal, sometimes intentionally, sometimes not. So what should be done? Two things need to be, in two ways, we as parents need to be working to help our children. Number one, as much as possible, be informed about where your kids go, who they interact with, what they're doing, and learn about who they are as people by having a good sense of what their interests are and what their hobbies are at any given time. And they change so rapidly as the child kind of comes in that age of preteen teen. These fads, these movements, they shift so quickly, and you can kind of track them on social medias too. I'm not saying to like make an account and stalk your children, but I would encourage all parents to at least be aware not only of the platforms. You should have a familiarity with all these platforms, from the Facebooks that are now kind of like the dinosaurs of social media, to the kind of the more cutting edge and popular amongst younger people, like the TikToks. So there's a general trend when a social media platform is overtaken by an older generation, it becomes useless to a younger group and they migrate to something else. So being young and hip and all of those things are really essential to the well-being and the longevity of any social media platform that is targeted to younger people. And YouTube. I can't stress this enough. There's a whole world that's there. YouTube is not just to watch, short clips of, what's happening in the world or, funny videos, but it's also its own community that produces content and it has a following. So the first thing, practical advice, be familiar with all of these platforms. Spend time on them. And in the month of Ramadan, I don't want to encourage anyone to engage in sin. I don't want you to open up TikTok and the first thing that you see is something like completely unacceptable and illicit. But I mean, what else are we going to do? We have to know, we have to understand to be able to then kind of like protect our children, teach our children, or completely, set that off limits. You can use this social media platform, but not the other one, because I've determined that like a vast majority of what is the content that's produced on this platform it's unhealthy. It's just not good for you. So you set that line and say, like, for example, none of our kids are going to be using TikTok because TikTok produces garbage content for the most part. There may be some good stuff or valuable stuff or innocuous things there too. So first thing, familiarize yourself. Some of that comes with your own exploration. Some of that can come with parental development workshops. All of this can happen within the confines of a masjid or whatever other community organization. But if you're a young parent in your 20s or 30s, or if you're a grandparent in your 70s or 80s, it's helpful to know the world that your children are living in. So that's the first thing. The second thing is have that open. Second thing before I go, be observant. You should be allowed access to most, if not all, spaces. You shouldn't intrude, but you should still be allowed access. This notion of like, I'm not saying that you can barge into your child's room at any point. I know that's a rule in some houses. I'm not taking a position here. Some parents, either through trial and error or just as a rule, they don't even have doors in certain homes. There's no door here, no privacy here. We all live together. But whatever the rule is in the house, there should still be an understanding that a person is granted that access. And however you want to rationalize it to your children, you can, but it's important that they understand that your presence there is not meant to be seen as an intrusion. So long as they are still in the process of growing and maturing, they need support. And they have to appreciate the support and everything that comes with it. A lot of times when in families they struggle with, this is my house, my rules, that's really kind of like a last resort way of making the child understand that there are pros and cons of being dependent. The pro is financially support you, give you a roof over your head, a food on the table to eat. The cons are, if you want to call them that, is that you can't just live however you want. You have to abide by certain rules. That's obviously, a last resort. We don't want that to be the standard, because you're already you're already kind of competing with one another. And once the child finds an alternative that resolves their shelter and their food and whatever, then a lot of times, what reason do they have to stay? And they'll leave. So again, I'm sorry if I'm kind of going off topic a little bit here. The point I was trying to make in number 2 is allow yourself the opportunities, but also the access to observe, uninterrupted. So when your child is not in school, you should have, obviously, that's your domain. That you should know what your child is doing, and you should feel comfortable that you are supporting them in all of these different activities and engagements that they're having. Your child wants to online game, fine. Have an understanding of what that technology is, the understanding of the world. What does your child want to play? What does that actually entail? What are, again, the risks, the dangers, and the payoffs? You have to understand those things so you can make a convincing argument with your child to say, for example, I find this acceptable for these reasons. I find this problematic for these reasons. I find this completely unacceptable for these reasons. So either we're going to accept, we'll have this win-win, or we're going to, compromise. I'll compromise on some things. You can compromise on some things, and we'll come to an agreement. So they're online gaming, fine. You still have to be aware of what they're playing, let's say how long they're playing, and then how it affects them as people. We came to an agreement that you would play this game. I can see that your behavior is, deteriorated, this, and that. This is concerning to me. Either we're going to stop it or we have to make certain adjustments, right? So all of that is to ensure while the child is experiencing all of these new things and they're being immersed in a certain culture, that you are there alongside them to navigate them, to support them, not to abandon them. Oh, I don't understand the world of gaming, so it's not my response. I'm going to take an all or nothing approach, a completely binary approach. You can, you cannot. Right? In this game, if there are guns, you cannot play it. In this game, if there's if there's sports, you can play it. It's not that simple anymore. That's my encouragement. Observation should be there. And sometimes you have to spend time to observe, to know. School is a completely different topic, and it will come up hopefully in the future, and because I want to spend time on it. All I'll say at this point is this. As far as the school is concerned, you probably are not going to be able to observe because you don't have access to go and sit with your child and spend the whole school day with your child just to see what's going on there. You're reliant on who? Your child to inform you of what's going on at school. That means them verbally telling you their reports, their behavior, and that depends on really how observant you are of positive and negative changes. Their peers, if you know who they are, their classmates, and finally, school administration, teachers, and educators there that are going to, if they are going to be in communication with you, can kind of relay some information about how they're doing. But remember, all of that is going to be determined by the type of school, the vision of the school, the morals and ethics of the school, and so many other things. So if we really want to take this principle seriously, of distance yourself from its perpetrators with all your might. It's a tall order. I have to know, first of all, what things are problematic to distance myself. Number 2, I need to know and these are specifically in these areas: schooling, friends, social media, gaming, video, like videos and media, music, clothing, all of these things. In all of these facets, there has to be an evil, a munkar. Stay away from it. And then there's the gray areas. You have to negotiate. And then there's the green zone that says, okay, these are okay. So a parent needs to know those things. And then they need to, through their own assessment, then they need to teach the child how to identify, negotiate, and kind of make good choices about how they distance themselves from the perpetrators of evil with all of their might. See how it's not such a simple thing to do? Stay away from evil things. If we understand this statement to just tell our children, stay away from evil things. These are bad things. That's not what the Imam is saying here. And this letter is, sometimes it's anxiety-inducing because it adds all this responsibility on the shoulders of parents. But we already established in the beginning that parenting is never easy, and because we're doing something, we're doing something special here. Nurturing a child to maturity to be a servant of God. It's no simple thing. Okay, so I spent all that time again on that one sentence to show and how much not only depth there is, but how much we can use these in the construction of our parenting styles, and perhaps even in the resources that we offer each other in our pursuits of being better parents. I wish that we could, have an opportunity to discuss these. I'm sure there's a lot of questions and a lot of input. Restrictions of this medium of programming, but I really am hoping that this kind of begins or continues these types of conversations, and we come with open minds and open hearts. All right. Then the Imam states, وَجَاهِدْ فِي اللَّهِ حَقَّ جِهَادِهِ وَلَا تَأْخُذُ فِي اللَّهِ لَوْمَةَ لَائِمٍ. We said, so strive in the way of God in a way that's worthy of him. Spoke about this briefly last night. And do not let people's censures overwhelm you while you strive for the pleasure of God. All right, this is the part where we ended last night, and I want to connect it to the next part. And hopefully in the 10 minutes or so that we have, I want to make a few points here. وَخُذِ الْغَمَرَاتِ لِلْحَقِّ حَيْثُ كَانَ. And then the Imam says, on top of all this, enjoining the good, forbidding the evil, striving in the way of God in a way that is worthy of God, don't let people's censures overwhelm you. Then the Imam says, plunge into hardship for truth's sake, wherever it may lie. It's like a step further. Not only enjoying the good and then forbid the evil too, and strive in the way of God. The Imam saying, wherever you find something that's truthful, a right, justice, plunge into the hardship for the sake of truth. It's really the next level. So, again, for some of us, as parents, as children, whatever, if we're allowed to, amr bil ma'ruf, nahy anil munkar, jahid fi Allahi haqqa jihadi, if we're able to do all of these things, but it doesn't require an unbearable amount, as we define it, of hardship, then we'll say, okay, we'll do it. We're Muslim, for God's sake, for God's pleasure, for our own hereafter, all of these things that we're trying to, justify and bargain. But when hardship comes into the picture, whoa, there's so many easy things we should do. Before we move on to the hardship, Imam says, even if there's hardship, if truth is at stake, if there's a good that needs to be done, if there's a right that needs to be done, plunge into hardship. So don't shy away from it. And the Imam says, وَتَفَقَّهْ فِي الدِّينِ, and become learned in the religion. وَعَوِّدْ نَفْسَكَ التَّصَبُّرَ عَلَى الْمَكْرُوهِ وَنِعْمَ الْخُلْقُ التَّصَبُّرُ فِي الْحَقِّ. And accustom yourself to have patience through hardship, as patience for truth's sake is a marvelous trait. So this notion of hardship and its importance in building not just well-rounded, but truth-seeking and ambassadors of good for our children is really important. Now, I want to just mention that we don't want to conflate things. There's this idea of, these two poles of either you should helicopter parent and coddle your child, and that's the best way to protect them from all of the evils and risks and dangers of life, or you should kind of just like shove them into the deep end without any sort of help, without any sort of instruction, without any sort of confidence or self-esteem, and let them figure things out in life on their own because that's how I did it. They're both wrong. So what studies show us, and there's been a lot of research that has been conducted on early childhood development, or just children's development, within the hard sciences and kind of the humanities and social sciences. But when the Imam says hardship here, it's important to remember that hardship here is not about material, excessive material adversity. So the research that has been done right now shows that early adversity, the impact that it has on childhood development, for the most part, it's negative. Adversity here is not just about, well, your child doesn't get whatever they want. It's about extreme poverty, abuse, neglect, and the relationships that it has with development of the brain, with stress levels. So if a person is struggling financially, or struggling with major behavioral issues, abuse, drug addictions, other addictions, that's definitely going to be detrimental to a child, their development, and have long-term effects. But let's say, and there are solutions to that even within the Muslim community about attending to people who need support. Then financially, there should be no problem. If the person's only trouble is financial help or like career help, that should be the easiest thing to resolve, right? But the other things require a little bit more infrastructure and working with existing institutions that can help with that. But whatever. Let's say our problem here, our focus here, is not about extreme poverty or about abuse. It's about neglect, let's say. Neglect. So this can also have detrimental effects on a child's development, and it carries on into their teenage years and throughout their adult life. So the first thing that this research tells us is obviously that the early experiences that children have, they influence the development of the brain. That stuff is well documented, and Islam has a certain kind of focus on being sensitive and kind of planting good seeds in your children for them to grow with them from an early age, even prior to their birth, during conception and from their beginning. But also, for them to learn how to cope with adversity. So the Imam says plunge into hardship, right? So research is telling us that there's different types of stresses. There's toxic stress. Toxic stress when children are not surrounded by supportive networks, adults of other support networks, educators, mentors, family members, whatever. Adults, I meant parents, I apologize. So these people, there's a heightened level of toxic stress in the lives of these children. And then there are hardships that with a support network can lead to tolerable stress or positive stress, where a child has a certain experience, they encounter that support system, and the stress response system kind of like returns to a baseline. When the Imam says enter into hardships, again, how do we allow our children, even from early ages, to experience certain types of difficulties to help them better appreciate their principles and to learn from the mistakes that they make? Again, like I said the other night, in controlled environments with support. So some of that can just be in the restrictions that we have in what they get, the luxuries that we afford them in life if we're in a position to do so, establishing a strong work ethic. And work ethic doesn't mean to work your child like an adult so they can learn how to work hard. No, but make sure your children are not lazy and they're not, that they have innovation and creativity there, that they have a sense of responsibility. These are all really important in helping your child develop. And that opportunity to plunge into hardship in early times and connecting it with something that is important builds that connection in the mind of the child, in the soul of the child, to identify what is good and to apply oneself for the sake of the truth, and to be able to endure and also kind of work through the adversity, the difficulty, the hardship, the challenge that will come with doing that kind of work. If your child is only kind of like success oriented and finding the routes to achieve that success that minimizes their hardship in life, that's when they find themselves in ethical conundrums. That's when they find themselves making objectionable choices. Because the goal is to become, for example, economically prosperous. So what's the easiest or the least difficult way to get there? Is this path that includes, either, again, like I said, problematic approaches, activities, or there's a more Islamically acceptable way, but it has hardships, it has bumps along the way, it has uncertainty along the way. Why would the person choose the latter? They'll choose the easier one. So we have this issue of not necessarily plunging into hardship because much of life is challenging, but for what sake are you doing it? For career prosperity, economic prosperity, most of us, if not all of us, will endure the hardship. But for the sake of truth, I don't know. I'm not one to judge, but I don't know. And then the question is why? You know what I really wanted to talk about tonight, and I wasted all the time. I exhausted all of my time inefficiently speaking on these few points that the Imam is making. I wanted to ask the question of why so many younger people who have potentials to be leaders in the community, in their lives, whatever, don't. What we commonly hear and what we can observe is that a part of the reason of the stagnation of the Muslim community is that we don't have good leaders. Good leaders, a leader doesn't mean a person who occupies a leadership position. That's not, anybody can occupy a leadership position. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about how we have incredibly creative, smart, humble, open-handed individuals, many of them that are younger, and younger means, let's say, I don't know, I don't like drawing lines, but let's say 35 and below, 40 and below for those of you who are in that range. And they have the potential to be excellent leaders and to advance not only the needs of the Muslim community, but contribute towards the betterment of society, but they don't assume those positions. Why? Your child is a successful physician. They're a successful engineer. They are a successful accountant. They're a successful dentist. They're a successful writer. They're a successful teacher. So they're obviously can be successful what they put their mind and their heart to. Why is it that very few of them want to be successful leaders in the community? And community leader doesn't mean put a turban on and lead the prayer. That's not what I'm talking about. Successful leader, again, is to try and outline in collaboration with others a vision for the community and to help in the construction of a roadmap to get there, and then assuming a responsibility in one of those projects or one of those facets. And then the question becomes, how can we teach our children to become leaders? That's what I wanted to talk about. Why? Because when the Imam says plunge into hardship for truth's sake, training to become a leader, an effective leader for the sake of Allah, for the sake of Islam, for the sake of truth, that's not an easy thing, and it's incredibly scarce in today's world. Why? First of all, it's because of the opportunity cost. Who wants to become a leader and and welcome all of the burden and difficulty and pain and stress in their lives with very little return on investment, the afterlife, but God is merciful and forgiving, versus kind of doing what they do best in their own industries and trying their best that they can to minimize that stress and responsibility. Or if it's heightened, then at least they're compensated accordingly for it. Why would they do that? Then we have the problem of just having terrible experiences with people who are currently or were previously in leadership positions. Terrible experiences. Some of it just because of poor interactions, about people not being able to, preserve their composure. Some of it having to do with the fact that the person who's in that leadership position has no right to be there. They have no qualifications. But it's also because from a young age, we may not be grooming them to become leaders. So how can we do that? That's what I wanted to talk about. And just a few things that are, kind of very simple to remember about how we can do that. And again, all of this is just an excuse to get us talking about these things. So first, your children need to learn about a good example of who and what a leader is. So we have imams. Brother, we have the imams. Did you want Imam Ali? Yes, Imam Ali is an excellent leader. The Prophet, peace and blessings, is an excellent leader. Ahlul Bayt are excellent leaders. They're there. They should always be there. There also should be more people in that list. Much lower, fine, but they should also be on that list. And guess who should also be on the list? Their parents, members of the community. Remember that do as I say, not what I do, how that's a failing model. They need to see examples. Being a good role model of what it means to take a leadership position, of doing something that is in the best interest of the collective and trying your best to also succeed at that. Even if it means being your child's soccer or basketball coach, fine, that's a leadership position. Not many people may want to do that because, again, you have to deal with parents, which is, wow, it's sometimes more difficult to deal with parents than with kids. I speak from experience, not just coaching, but I am a soccer referee, and I've been doing it for about 17 years now. It's brutal. The younger the kids are, the more brutal your experiences are. I started about 14 years old, and people were yelling obscenities at me because little Timmy, for example, didn't get to, win the ball. So setting a good example. Teaching kids about confidence. Having confident children. Not prideful. Not egotistic. Not narcissistic. Confident. And the Quran speaks about confidence so much, mu'mineen. Third, teaching your children about the importance of kind of advancing a certain objective or an agenda or an ideal. It's important to them, the success of the Muslim community. We are responsible for it, and why we'd all be better for it if we contributed collectively. Our kids need to understand that. Very few kids understand that. It pains me to say very few kids, because they're just not taught to think like that. They're taught to think, well, that's charity. And charity obviously is determined by one's ability, and it's supererogatory. It's extra credit. You do extra credit either because you're struggling in the main area and you have to make up for it, you have to compensate, or because you just like to do it. Everyone does it to some extent, but it's extra. So people think like that. If kids think like that, okay, it's extra. Caring for the community and caring for community, building community infrastructure and giving back and funding and participating, all of those are extra credit. So I don't feel like doing it right now. Guess what? It'll never get done. And not just because of the bystander effect. It's not like kids are they are expecting, oh, someone else will do it. One of my peers will do it. No. They just don't believe it. It's charity. It's charity. Do whatever we want. If we don't do it, we don't do it. Next is also to help, we've spoken about this, so I'll just kind of teaching our children the value of making mistakes and that failure isn't a bad thing. Learning from your mistakes is good. Learning from your failures is good. Progress is good. Perfection is unreasonable. So again, allowing opportunities for our kids to kind of take on leadership opportunities, have their successes, have their failures, and help groom them through these processes. Not like with the first time a child makes a mistake, oh, I knew it from the beginning. They don't have what it takes. No, people are, they can grow, they can develop, they can change, they can become better. Investing in that. I apologize, I'm 40 plus minutes in, and we didn't read much of this letter, but we kind of took it to the end of this paragraph, I guess. Please share with us and think on how we can incorporate hardship to build perseverance, not patience, only perseverance within our children, because it's that perseverance that we need to help move things forward. And that's really, those are the invaluable traits that we hope our children will develop alongside all of the other things that are important, like their health, like their, their financial and economic stability, their career successes and accolades, all of those academic accolades, all of those are really important, but these things are also meant to be there too, to help them live their lives fully as Muslims, inshallah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us in the pursuit of raising good children, children that are pleasing to Him, children that are mature, children that are learned in the religion, and children that understand the value of serving others, and keep an eye on the hereafter, inshallah. I want to thank you all, and I want to apologize for taking so much of your time. I apologize that I was not very articulate tonight, and it's not to say that I am in past nights, but it's just a frustration. Not even a frustration, I guess. Maybe it's a frustration. There's so much to talk about here, and it's not just talk about like I want to provide commentary, but like there's action items here, and there's things that we badly need here, and there are, I think, solutions here too. That just moving past it feels like such an injustice, but also it weighs heavily on me. So inshallah, we'll make more progress moving forward. Please forgive me for my shortcomings. Keep me in your du'as. Wassalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
الرحيم اللهم إني أفتتح الثناء بحمدك وأنت مسدد للصواب بمنك وأيقنت أنك أنت أرحم الراحمين في موضع العفو والرحمة وأشد المعاقبين في موضع النكال والنقمة وأعظم المتجبرين في موضع الكبرياء والعظمة اللهم أذنت لي في دعائك ومسألتك فاسمع يا سميع مدحتي وأجب يا رحيم دعوتي وأقل يا غفور عثرتي فكم يا إلهي من كربة قد فرجتها وهموم قد كشفتها وعثرة قد أقلتها ورحمة قد نشرتها وحلقة بلاء قد فككتها الحمد لله الذي لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا ولم يكن له شريك في الملك ولم يكن له ولي من الذل وكبره تكبيرا. الحمد لله بجميع محامده كلها على جميع نعمه كلها. الحمد لله الذي لا مضاد له في ملكه ولا منازع له في أمره. الحمد لله الذي لا شريك له في خلقه ولا شبيه له في عظمته. الحمد لله الفاشي في الخلق أمره وحمده، الظاهر بالكرم مجده، الباسط بالجود يده، الذي لا تنقص خزائنه ولا تزيده كثرة العطاء إلا جودا وكرما. إنه هو العزيز الوهاب. اللهم إني أسألك قليلا من كثير مع حاجة بي إليه عظيما، وغناك عنه قديم، وهو عندي كثير، وهو عليك سهل يسير. اللهم إن عفوك عن ذنبي وتجاوزك عن خطيئتي وصفحك عن ظلمي وسترك على قبيح عملي وحلمك عن كثير جرمي عندما كان من خطئي وعمدي، أطمعني في أن أسألك ما لا أستوجبه منك، الذي رزقتني من رحمتك وأريتني من قدرتك وعرفتني من إجابتك، فصرت أدعوك آمنا وأسألك مستأنسا، لا خائفا ولا وجلا، مدلا عليك فيما قصدت فيه إليك. فإن أبطأ عني عتبت بجهلي عليك، ولعل الذي أبطأ عني هو خير لي لعلمك بعاقبة الأمور. فلم أر مولا كريما أصبر على عبد لئيم منك علي يا رب. إنك تدعوني فأولي عنك، وتتحبب إلي فأتبغض إليك، وتتودد إلي فلا أقبل منك، كأن لي التطول عليك، فلم يمنعك ذلك من الرحمة لي والإحسان إلي والتفضل علي بجودك وكرمك. فارحم عبدك الجاهل وجد عليه بفضل إحسانك، إنك جواد كريم. الحمد لله مالك الملك مجري الفلك مسخر الرياح فالق الإصباح ديان الدين رب العالمين. الحمد لله على حلمه بعد علمه، والحمد لله على عفوه بعد قدرته، والحمد لله على طول أناته في غضبه، وهو قادر على ما يريد. الحمد لله خالق الخلق باسط الرزق فالق الإصباح ذي الجلال والإكرام والفضل والإنعام، الذي بعد فلا يرى وقرب فشهد النجوى، تبارك وتعالى. الحمد لله الذي ليس له منازع يعادله ولا شبيه يشاكله ولا ظهير يعاضده. قهر بعزته الأعزاء وتواضع لعظمته العظماء، فبلغ بقدرته ما يشاء. الحمد لله الذي يجيبني حين أناديه ويستر علي كل عورة وأنا أعصيه، ويعظم النعمة علي فلا أجازي. فكم من موهبة هنيئة قد أعطاني، وعظيمة مخوفة قد كفاني، وبهجة مونقة قد أراني. فأثني عليه حامدا وأذكره مسبحا. الحمد لله الذي لا يهتك حجابه ولا يغلق بابه ولا يرد سائله ولا يخيب آمله. الحمد لله الذي يؤمن الخائفين وينجي الصالحين ويرفع المستضعفين ويضع المستكبرين ويهلك ملوكا ويستخلف آخرين. والحمد لله قاصم الجبارين مبير الظالمين مدرك الهاربين نكال الظالمين صريخ المستصرخين موضع حاجات الطالبين معتمد المؤمنين. الحمد لله الذي من خشيته ترعد السماء وسكانها وترجف الأرض وعمارها وتموج البحار ومن يسبح في غمراتها. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. الحمد لله الذي يخلق ولم يخلق ويرزق ولا يرزق ويطعم ولا يطعم ويميت الأحياء ويحيي الموتى وهو حي لا يموت بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وأمينك وصفيك وحبيبك وخيرتك من خلقك وحافظ سرك ومبلغ رسالاتك أفضل وأحسن وأجمل وأكمل وأزكى وأنمى وأطيب وأطهر وأسنى وأكثر ما صليت وباركت وترحمت وتحننت وسلمت على أحد من عبادك وأنبيائك ورسلك وصفوتك وأهل الكرامة عليك من خلقك. اللهم وصل على علي أمير المؤمنين ووصي رسول رب العالمين، عبدك ووليك وأخي رسولك وحجتك على خلقك وآيتك الكبرى والنبأ العظيم. وصل على الصديقة الطاهرة فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين. وصل على صبطي الرحمة وإمامي الهدى الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة. وصل على أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي، حججك على عبادك وأمنائك في بلادك صلاة كثيرة دائمة. اللهم وصل على ولي أمرك القائم المؤمل والعدل المنتظر وحفه بملائكتك المقربين وأيده بروح القدس يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعله الداعي إلى كتابك والقائم بدينك، استخلفه في الأرض كما استخلفت الذين من قبله، مكن له دينه الذي ارتضيته له، أبدله من بعد خوفه أمنا، يعبدك لا يشرك بك شيئا. اللهم أعزه وأعزز به، وانصره وانتصر به، وانصره نصرا عزيزا، وافتح له فتحا يسيرا، واجعل له من لدنك سلطانا نصيرا. اللهم أظهر به دينك وسنة نبيك حتى لا يستخفي بشيء من الحق مخافة أحد من الخلق. اللهم إنا نرغب إليك في دولة كريمة تعز بها الإسلام وأهله، وتذل بها النفاق وأهله، وتجعلنا فيها من الدعاة إلى طاعتك والقادة إلى سبيلك، وترزقنا بها كرامة الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم ما عرفتنا من الحق فحملناه، وما قصرنا عنه فبلغناه. اللهم المم به شعثنا، واشعب به صدعنا، وارتق به فتقنا، وكثر به قلتنا، وأعزز به ذلتنا، وأغن به عائلنا، واقض به عن مغرمنا، واجبر به فقرنا، وسد به خلتنا، ويسر به عسرنا، وبيض به وجوهنا، وفك به أسرنا، وأنجح به طلبتنا، وأنجز به مواعيدنا، واستجب به دعوتنا، وأعطنا به سؤلنا، وبلغنا به من الدنيا والآخرة آمالنا، وأعطنا به فوق رغبتنا يا خير المسؤولين وأوسع المعطين. اشف به صدورنا وأذهب به غيظ قلوبنا، واهدنا به لما اختلف فيه من الحق بإذنك، إنك تهدي من تشاء إلى صراط مستقيم. وانصرنا به على عدوك وعدونا إله الحق آمين. اللهم إنا نشكو إليك فقد نبينا صلواتك عليه وآله، وغيبة ولينا، وكثرة عدونا، وقلة عددنا، وشدة الفتن بنا. ذلك بفتح منك تعجله